Hi everyone, how you doing? I'm Adam, welcome to the Quiet Dog Podcast. Back again, thanks for joining me, thanks for tuning back in. If you haven't already, I'm going to get this out of the way now, but smash that subscribe button, smash it with your whole fist. Click on the bell thing, share it with your friends, that would be amazing. I'm well, thanks for asking. I'm enjoying the sunshine, gotta say. We're all allowed outside now. Having a few beers in the garden, well not me, but you know, you are, and I can watch you from afar like this. That looks nice. How do you know if someone doesn't drink anymore? They'll tell you about it with bitterness and disdain. As I say, thanks for coming back. I am well. I'm good. I've got a guest on this week, so I don't want to chat on too much. But I suppose the guest I'll tell you first off is Andrew Lamerton, who's a good mate of mine from college way back when. I'll introduce him in a little while, but I just wanted to chat about something I'd seen on TV which rang a few bells for me, and I wanted to share it with you. So whilst we are all enjoying the sunshine and going back into beer gardens, there's not too much time for frivolity on this podcast, because this morning we're talking about suicide. I thought about doing that, and because I thought there's no real perfect way to shoehorn that into a seemingly light-hearted introduction. So yeah, I do want to chat a bit about suicide, if that's all right. I'll try and keep it light, but I can't promise anything. I watched the documentary with Kemp, who you may or may not know is Ross Kemp. He's from EastEnders, old Ross Kemp, Martin Kemp's son from Spandau Ballet. He's in his 20s something. The documentary is called Our Silent Emergency with Ross, for fuck's sake, Roman Kemp. And he spoke about, in 2020, he lost his mate, who was a producer on the radio. Roman Kemp is a presenter, he's a celebrity, he's a radio DJ, and the producer on that show was about his age as well, and they were really close. They'd been all over the world together doing these amazing interviews with people, and he really became like a brother to him. And one morning he rocked up to do his show, his breakfast show, as he does, and his mate didn't show up, the producer didn't show up. And after an hour, it was a bit of a joke. He's like, oh, he's probably been out the night before, he's slept in, missed his alarm, whatever. And then eventually that turned into, oh shit, something's actually wrong. They went to his house and they found him, he'd killed himself. And he recounts this with absolute just shock and confusion and bewilderment, really. And the reason it's called Our Silent Emergency is because people who suffer from depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts tend to be very, very good at covering it up, not showing their emotions and putting on a really good front. Roman was saying his mate was the most outgoing, lovely, talkative, energetic person you would ever meet on a night out in front of friends. But there was obviously a very different side to him, which I think is common in most cases of suicide. Like, they don't feel they can express, whether it's because they think they're a burden or they're going to bum people out. They choose not to. They choose to take their own lives, which is tragic. And it resonated a lot with me because, as I've discussed on here to a point, there are times when my head does come off, as I sometimes put it. That's really what I mean. And depression is something I've combated pretty much the whole of my adult life. And a lot of things have helped me over the years. Stopping drinking is just one of them. Stopping drinking is not, I wish it was the answer to everything, but it really isn't. The thing that Roman Kemp kept coming back to, and he reaches out to the community and he talks to a lot of lads his own age that have experienced exactly the same thing. He said on that day when they found his mate, there were 7 other calls of a similar nature, which is just shocking, really. So there are some statistics that I've looked up from Sky News, and this is a report from Sky News and the British Medical Journal. It says male suicides in England and Wales were at their highest rate in 2 decades last year. This is 2018, I think. The suicide rate for women was also the highest since 2004, according to data from the Office of National Statistics. Men accounted for 3/4 of suicide deaths registered in 2019. Despite a low number of deaths overall among people under the age of 25 years, the data showed that rates of suicide in this age group have generally increased in recent years, particularly in the case of 10 to 24-year-old females, whose rate has increased by 94% since 2012. Adrian James, president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, said it was crucial to identify the people most at risk and to provide tailored care to support them. He said this data proves real insight into particular groups in society who are at higher risk. We need to research to understand the reasons behind increased rates of suicide in teenage girls and young women, as well as middle-aged men. And it goes on to talk about the pandemic and how this has had an increase, shown an increase in suicides, people worried about job security. Again, not being able to express general concerns and depression and anxiety, about those being taboo subjects to bring up with friends and family. And there's another comment here. Rosina Allen Khan, Labour Shadow's mental health minister, said suicide is both a public health and social inequality issue, and with the right intervention it is preventable today. Today's figures must be a wake-up call for the government. So, things that did help me: having a supportive and loving family, friends around me. The main thing that stopped me doing it really was going to my GP. And it's happened a couple of the times I've been put on antidepressants. If you are having suicidal thoughts or you're struggling, that would be my first port of call. You can't speak to anybody, there's helplines, there is help available. You can go to your GP. And that was the outcome of this documentary, which I thought was really positive. It was about put more services out there that deal with this kind of thing. So he talks about there's a mental health emergency services in Nottingham now, which is predominantly designed for people who are in mental health crises. Increasing awareness in school so that children can identify and have an awareness of things like anxiety and depression, and that it's okay to talk about. There was a clip of kids in school, as I just said, talking about what these things are and that it's okay to talk about those things. Another useful thing that he said, which I've thought about, is the 2 OK rule, which is when you're having chats with your mates and just checking in on them and you say, "You all right, mate?" And they go, yeah. That's a formality. We all do that. But if you ask them a second time, "Yeah, but are you really okay?" They may be more inclined to think, "Oh, well, he's not just saying this for effect. He's actually inviting me to talk a bit more. If there is something that I can talk about it." So the 2 OK rule is something that Roman Kemp suggested, and I'm going to suggest it to you now. If you've got a mate or anyone who you think might be struggling, or more importantly, even if you think they're doing all right, reach out to them, say, "How are you doing?" "No, but how are you really doing?" And you never know, they might open up and tell you something that they didn't feel as comfortable saying before, or they might just say, "Yeah, I'm fine, fuck off and leave me alone. What are we doing later?" We are getting better at it, I think, but there's still a ways to go no one should really feel that the only option they have is to take their own life. So we can all do a bit more, I think, in making it less of a taboo thing to chat to people when you feel like your head's well and truly coming off. And thanks to my mates and thanks to my family and everyone around me who has supported me personally. Right, let's introduce my guest. Thank you very much to Andrew Lamerton, aka my good mate Chop, from way back in college. We've known each other for about 20 years now, and off the back of one of my first podcasts, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, listen, mate, I've got a few things around this stuff you're talking about that I'm very well versed in, and I'd love to come on and have a chat with you. So I said, yeah. Andrew Lamerton is a very genuine and, I have to say, resilient guy. The stuff that he's been through from a very early age of 14 and the attitude he has is just really, it blows my mind, to be honest, how much he's overcome. I'm going to show you a picture of him because it was his birthday, as you'll see, when we did this interview on Monday. He just turned 37, and I was looking through some old photos on Facebook, and what better way to introduce a guest other than to show a slightly embarrassing photograph of them from way back when. So here he is. That's Chop there, being fed something awful, I imagine. I can't remember what was in it, but you can see me there in the background, really quite enjoying it. But there's a bit of fear in the eyes there. You'll recognise Adam Cox maybe in the background. He is Adam Cox from the Cox's Cakes. He looks like he's proper into this, almost just emotionally detached. Like, this is what we do. What of it? This is what we do now. I'm 20. It must have been about 23, maybe younger. But that's a good mate of ours, George, holding him back, leading the charge. I'm not sure who it is. That's a mate of Andy's, giving him the drink there. But we've come a long way. I don't know what the tin foil hat was for, but it seemed appropriate. Another thing I wanted to mention quickly about Chop is that towards the end of the interview, we started talking about his recent diagnosis of MS, or multiple sclerosis. And there were a few technical problems, so you'll see that I get a bit preoccupied with how much time we've actually got left, because the free trial on the software I was using was about to expire. I wasn't sure if we were going to lose anything, so we kind of glossed over that, but I just wanted to give you a bit more information on that. Firstly, Chop is doing really well. He's undergoing treatment. For those of you that don't know what multiple sclerosis is, it's a chronic, typically progressive disease involving damage to the sheaths of nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, whose symptoms may include numbness, impairment of speech and of muscular coordination, blurred vision and severe fatigue. Multiple sclerosis is caused by your immune system mistakenly attacking the brain and nerves. It's not clear why this happens. That's useful, isn't it? If you're worried about what it is, you look on WebMD. It's not clear why this happens, just the body just decides to fuck itself. He's doing really well. His treatment is going great. It does leave him feeling very, very taxed and withdrawn afterwards, very much like going for chemotherapy. It does have a huge impact on the body, but all in all, the treatment is working. It's becoming less frequent now, and he is, along with his own amazing attitude towards it, his body seems to be responding well to the treatment, so that's all good. I just wanted to flag that up. I wish him all the best. Thanks for the interview, mate, and without further ado, here he is. Here I am, chatting with my good mate, Andy Chop Lamerton.
I'll catch you later, mate. Don't go changing, try and please me, all right?
Yeah, nice one, bruv, yeah.
Oh, nice one, brother.
Nice one, brother.
Nice one, brother.
I said, nice, bruv.
Nice one, brother.
I said, nice, bruv.
Fucking nice one, brother.
Nice one, bruv. Brother.
Fuck off.
Hello again.
How's that sound?
Oh, that's much better. Yeah. Test Icicles. Do you remember that band, Test Icicles? Do you remember them?
No, but
Do you
I wish
not?
I did.
It's a good name. It's pretty much the only thing they had going for themselves. It's, are we recording? Yes, we're recording. Happy birthday, mate. First and
yes.
foremost, happy birthday. I didn't even know it was your birthday, man. And you decided to come and have a chat with me. That's ace.
I just thought, why not? And if truth be told, I'd kind of forgotten myself.
Had you really?
Well, not forgotten. I know I've always known when my birthday is, but it just, you know, when dates suddenly date, anything from when certain bills are due to be paid, or if you've got a doctor's appointment, whatever it may be, suddenly days are like, oh my God, suddenly the 12th. So that's all that happened. It creeps up on you. It creeps up on you.
Is that lockdown related? The days sort of merging into one for you as well? I feel like it's getting to that point now. And I mean, great timing as well on your birthday that we're allowed back in pubs today. As of
Well,
today, man. Well,
well,
not
as I
in
said,
pubs, in beer gardens. Let's not get
yeah,
too excited.
I had a word with our Prime Minister for everybody, so you're
Good, man.
welcome.
Yeah, thank
Just
you.
mentioned, could do with celebrating a little bit, if that's
Yeah.
okay. And then thought people might want hairdressing salons, gyms, shops. So, thought of everybody else as well.
Good. You weren't
But thought,
selfishly just thinking of
yeah,
your own needs. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yes, it's my selfless need.
Beauty parlors, barbers, which I'm happy to say I got in one today, and I feel like a new man.
Yeah, well,
For yourself, you
anyway,
went, you crossed
don't, really-
crossed
don't
that
really
bridge
need a
a while
barber
ago.
anymore. But yeah, cheers for saying it.
Actually, on that, when did you decide to just get rid of it?
I think.
Was it a conscious thing? Was that linked into lockdown? Because
No.
was it not?
I've been doing it for a few years. Really,
Yeah,
I've just kind of gradually been getting a bit shorter and a bit shorter. I think I know it's almost cliched. I won't do it because I'll fall off my chair. But
Oh,
it
okay.
must have been about a decade ago where I leant back and I
Yeah.
was like, "My God, my head's freezing."
Oh,
And
really?
then the old sort of memories on social media, and I'm looking at pictures. I'm going, seriously, why did nobody tell me I look ridiculous? And just thought, you
Was
know
it
what, screw it. And
good?
yeah,
That's power to you, man. I think it takes balls to do that because it must happen so gradually. I mean, mine's starting to go a bit there, but then there has to come a day when you decide. I say it's going.
yeah.
I'm taking control, and
Yeah.
it's gone.
I think
Fair play to you,
it's
man.
similar to what you mentioned then, the lockdown thing, that control, the choice for yourself. And that's,
Yeah.
just one day. I don't remember when, a day before today, a couple of years ago, I think went down to some cheap shop like B&M or something, was like clippers, 15 quid, that'll do me.
Yeah.
And just ever since, just not really bothered.
And less time consuming as well in the morning. Just get up. That's you
Yeah,
out the door,
absolutely. Wash my hair. Oh, done.
mate.
And yeah, I mean, cheaper as well, because if you don't mind me asking, how much was your slick on fleek trim today?
Very, very, very expensive where I go. Very expensive. It was a tenner, actually. It's not too bad.
Well, mine was free, innit?
Yours was free. Who's laughing now? Are you at work now? Are you working?
Technically, yeah.
Oh yeah,
But,
I got you a
don't tell
little.
any-
I got you this, mate. Just as a little sort of. I thought I'd start with a bit of a bang. Happy birthday to you, mate. I won't sing happy birthday because I know how excruciating that is. But make a wish, blow out the candle, blow it out. There you go. Happy birthday, man.
It's like I'm in the room with you.
Happy birthday.
Wow.
You can't eat that, but I will eat it on your behalf. And I'll send you a memo. It's blueberry.
Thanks, mate.
And also to
I'll have a
celebrate.
sip of water.
Oh, you got water. I've got. I thought I'd splash out, and I got some alcohol-free prosecco just to mark the occasion.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I believe there's a brand called No Secco, as in, whoever thought of that was an absolute genius.
They got in there early with that branding. Everyone was thinking it, and they went ahead and did it. So yeah, I thought I'd celebrate just with a little tipple of this, just to kick things off.
Nice.
I'll tell you how it tastes. It's called Frixine. I can't even pronounce the name of that, so it must be good.
Fresnay.
Fresnay. Yeah. Well done.
I don't know.
I like that. You made that sound posher than I did. Light fruity enjoyment. I'll tell you how it tastes.
I've got some beer snacks, if that counts.
Oh, it's lovely. Beer snacks. What are they?
As in, pub bar snacks.
Oh,
Jalapeno and kaffir lime cashews.
Oh, nice. Good stuff, man.
Exciting.
How have you been generally during the lockdown? Like, I know this is kind of normal now to open conversations instead of like, how have you been? It's like, how's your head been? How are you? We've become more accustomed to that, haven't we? Of sort of going in deep, even with just light-hearted chit chat or small talk. It seems to be much more loaded now with that kind of emphasis. Have you noticed that at all?
And that kind of with it being my birthday, I don't know how many times I'm going to throw that in, but I'll try my best to minimize it as best as I can. But I did actually have 2 or 3 birthday cards that say "Stay safe" in it, and
Really?
it's like, well, I've got to years of age as of today, 37. I don't care. Shush. I'm aware of how to stay safe, but at the same time, that isn't kind of negative about somebody else suggesting I should stay safe. Perhaps they
No.
love me,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
nice. But yeah,
yeah.
it's the lockdown in general. It's been a drag, hasn't it?
Mm,
Really,
yeah.
it's been up and down. I think is what everybody's probably experienced. I've had some, which is probably what we'll discuss throughout this call. I've had some genuinely really good highs, and some not crushing, but some negativity, which has been an absolute pest. But
Hmm.
as I said already, I'm still here. I've got to 37, so something's working, something's doing all right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Would,
yeah.
would you say your relationships with your friends and people around you, would you say they've toughened and deepened over the past year? I know this sounds like such a cliche question now, but to me, it seems like that's a definite plus that's come out of this. Would you say
W-
the same for you?
Without doubt, I think if I may be so forward, this call right now, I'm not 100% sure if I'd have reached out to you to sort of suggest, hey, mate, really loving what you're doing. We actually go back a fair bit.
Mm.
Um, I'd like to get involved if you'll have me, or if you're bothered, or if I even fit the criteria of what are you trying to do kind of thing. And I think that's
Absolutely, man.
kind of evidence or proof, whatever the difference is.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally speaking, some of my friendships have massively solidified. Um, Spoke to a few people over the past few days, just sort of catching up with what they're up to.
Mm.
Speak to my sister quite a lot, who lives on the other side, the Pennines in Hull,
Right.
for obvious reasons. Can't overly just pop in the car and visit her. Speak to her quite a lot, and
Yeah.
I think she'd agree with me when I said we didn't massively speak a lot. We spoke obviously, but it's kind
Yeah.
of we've got a WhatsApp chat. Probably everybody's got a WhatsApp chat with
Oh,
everybody.
yeah. Got loads of them. I can't keep track of them.
Seriously,
Yeah,
but
man.
it like pretty much every day, even if it's just a
Wow.
silly meme or have you seen this or look at this song that I've heard, and it's like seriously that came out 20 years ago. I am aware, but I think that's a key thing. I haven't don't necessarily then say, "Are you serious? It's 20 years old that song." I just go, "Oh yeah, cool. Cheers, thanks for thinking
Yeah.
of and
You
letting
know,
me know that
you
song."
know that that's the exchange, that you're just checking in with each other and keeping that ball in the air, I suppose. I've had that
Uh,
with family and friends, and recognizing that what we're doing is checking in on each other. You might not say that explicitly, but just the exchange in and of itself is enough to get out of your own head for a bit, because it is so easy to fall into that self-perpetuating cycle. I've done it loads of times, and again, right back at you, man. This conversation, the opening up of chats around mental health, especially with guys our age, I think is really important. So I was really made up when you reached out, man, off the back of the podcast that I've been doing. And initially I did think, oh, it seems odd. And we had this conversation, didn't we, that it's odd to talk so openly about these things, because when you reached out to me, that message you said, and I know this about you in brief, you've experienced a lot of grief, your own trials and tribulations from a very early age of 14. And you thought that would be cathartic, maybe for
yeah,
yourself and for other people, to hear how open you are about that. But what I'm saying is, between the two of us, we've hardly spoken, I'd say, more than 10 minutes one to one.
oh
We've
no,
got, and we've known each other since, how old? Probably 15, 16, were we?
roughly, yeah, yeah,
Back in college.
a while
Yeah, yeah.
longer than I'm really happy to accept, but
I
yeah.
was thinking that about 20 years, getting up to
Oh,
20 years. I
yeah,
know,
yeah, it
man.
is.
So I was thinking how much has changed from for me personally as well as yourself, but going from your teens to your 20s to your 30s just seems like such a massive shift in your outlook on things, your whole attitude towards life. Personally, I feel like your 20s are just fucking throw shit up in the air and see where it lands.
Yeah. Bang! Hey!
Yeah.
Bang!
And
Oh,
then,
hit the net. Yeah.
and then your 30s is like, shit, let's try and piece all this together now. Would you say that's accurate in saying that?
In a very succinct manner, you've kind of described, well, potentially yourself, but you've kind of described my life, I suppose. Then, yeah, 20s, I was a bit off the rails. I'd suggest. I generally speaking, I always had a job, what you're supposed to do, earn a living, pay me bills, that sort of stuff. But I didn't overly look after myself. I think now I understand that part of what you touched on then, the whole great grief and loss thing, I hadn't actually dealt with that, and I just pretended I had, which is potentially why, for want of a better phrase, some people would say I am now. But I was a bit of an arsehole, to be honest. It's at two people as well, and I never meant for that. It's that control thing. I wanted to take control of what I was doing because a lot of what had happened to me was completely out of my control. But for the 20s into 30s thing, as you're aware, I'm 37. How many times am I going to say that? I'm 37
it's
now.
worth repeating, man.
Yeah,
It's an achievement. It's not
thanks, thanks, mate. I'm 18 times 2 plus 1. And
good quick math there.
Graduated. That's not the first time today I've said it, that's why. I graduated from university in July of last year. So I was 36. And that's because I kind of got to 30 and decided I kind of want to do something a bit more than what I have been doing. I was pretty much clear of using certain things to kind of anchor myself, whether it be booze or, unfortunately, drugs, to be perfectly frank, which is what this chat's about, as we know.
Yeah.
And over a year or two, I then thought, yep, this is what I want to do. So, as you know, I'm now a fully qualified social worker.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's great.
And I needed to go to college first and foremost to do an access course. So that was 2016, and 3 years at uni as an undergrad to the year of 2020. And it's exactly what you've mentioned there, in that I didn't really do that in my 20s. I wasn't bothered, even though possibly I may have been on reflection, but I didn't have that ability to believe in myself.
Yeah.
And I needed the crutches that I was using, which is again part of how I reached out to you, wasn't it? When you've mentioned before on previous podcasts about the whole addiction cycle, that was partly some of my crutches. And it took me time to rid myself of said crutches and think, I can do this, I can. And as I sit through a screen before you now, I've done it. I've got there. I've achieved it. I've qualified, and now I'm literally employed full time to do this role, and it's
a rewarding role as well. I had to, because I know in short what a social worker does, but I looked it up online just to get an outline of it for myself. But social worker identifies those in need, helps people of all life stages cope with and solve everyday problems, and advocate for and develop plans to improve clients' well-being, research and refer clients to community resources, work with individuals, families, or groups, and responds to clients in crisis situations. And that to me sounds like, and I don't want to big you up too much, Chop, a bit of a superhero, if I may be so bold.
Yes.
But I mean, those are all really rewarding things you're doing, and it seems like, as you've just said, you're using those, I guess, your own experiences, and now you're at a point where, am I right in saying you're sort of giving back to the community and plugging yourself into something rather than reacting to things and piecing things together? As I found, that's what I did throughout a lot of my late 20s. It was more of a conscious kind of piecing everything together. And then at some point you have to start thinking, well, what am I going to do now? what am I going to do with all this?
Without doubt. I mean, if you go way back to when you're at school, primary school or high school, whatever, you kind of set up you're educated on how to achieve grades or whatever, and how to learn rather than actually be a vocation or a job role. And some people are able to recognize what it is that they want to do. I didn't overly recognize what it is that I want to do, and it's taken me a while, mentioning as you did before about the whole 20s into your 30s thing. But I think I'll hold my hands up, and if I had graduated as a social worker in my 20s, I don't think I'd have been as well rounded or have the best options to choose for other people that I'm supporting. I think my life experience adds to it. But I don't, to be perfectly frank, I don't think I would have actually stuck it out if I'd enrolled at university. I don't know, 22 was a random number plucked out of 20s. Personally, and I think that's the whole point. We forget to advocate for ourselves a touch. We have a big, not obsession, but a big drive in the world today of anti-oppressive and anti-discriminatory just being, certainly practice in my world. But if we forget who ourselves are as individuals, we kind of at risk of oppressing ourselves, which doesn't really achieve anything.
No.
Because I think you have to remember that, because there are 22, 23-year-olds, whatever, who are qualified social. Quite frankly, they're probably phenomenal. They're probably brilliant. But for me, I wouldn't have been very good. And I know that. So it's that kind of, as you say, that growth to achieve what it is that you want to become. And you have to recognize it first and foremost. And as you said already, that incredible description of what a social worker does, which
it's there, it's on the internet, mate.
Probably better than I would have been able to. When you mentioned it, then I'm thinking, God, what is it that we do? And then you're reading it out, going,
yeah, I do that.
Yeah. I am. I spin plates. Yeah, that is one of those things that I do. Yeah. But I think I hold my hands up. I genuinely wouldn't have had the ability to do those things earlier in my life. I'd have fudged it, or probably been almost faking it to make it, so to speak. And that wouldn't have been very good for the individual that I was supporting in crisis. You stated correctly. It just wouldn't have been
viable.
I wouldn't have been a very good social worker, as I mentioned already.
So you mentioned about oppressing a few things throughout your 20s and using crutches like alcohol and drugs, which I definitely have as well. Just to delve into the stuff that you went through when you were 14. Again, if there's anything you don't want to talk about, please we'll gloss over it and move on. But just to give the viewer a bit of a roundup of what you went through. So correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you lost both your parents and your grandparents by the time you were 30.
Yep.
Now your mum, you lost to cancer when you were 14.
Yep.
And you, which was around about the same time that your dad came out as gay, which then meant around about that time you were then put into the care of your auntie. You then lost your dad. You were around about the age of 30. Is that right?
29 if we're being pedantic, but which is round about 30. So
yeah. So this is all stuff that you'd offered up to talk about. So I really just wanted to ask a very, very broad question, really, and I don't want to pry too much. I don't want this to become a voyeuristic thing because grief is obviously very, very personal, and I don't want to overstep any boundaries or anything. But I guess my first question would be, how do you even go about processing that when you're that young, I suppose, as 14?
I think you can't. At 14, your internal flow of emotions are just going left, right, and centre anyway, with the onset of the horror that is puberty. You couldn't pay me to go through that again. Oh my God. Yeah. But I think I'll probably make little bits of links to my studies, as we're talking about this again, because my studies itself have been rather cathartic in this understanding. To be perfectly honest, as a 14-year-old, you have that sort of inner resilience kind of there anyway, just because you're not overly aware of everything. And I think, again, for the viewers, you're probably aware, up until that age of sort of maybe 12, when my mum was actually first diagnosed and was very unwell, I had a pretty good 12 years, well, that I remember. I didn't really go without anything. We had nice holidays. There was always food on the table. Both my parents had a car, things like that. Then you get to 14 and this happens. And I think the actual stages of grief and loss from memory of my study is like an initial sort of denial, then there's anger, then there's bargaining, then there's a form of depression, and then it's almost that acceptance. So within that, I suppose I denied it in terms of that there's anything wrong. Also, as I touched on before, I had my younger sister, so that's like a supportive, protective side of things. Not to be all sort of masculine about anything, because I'm far from it anyway. It's just that, well, you protect any sibling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also because my dad was around, so to speak. Again, that denial sort of takes place within your brain, and you just go to school and crack on. Then there's that anger. And when I look back now, jeez, was I angry at times. And, acting out. I played a lot of rugby then. And part of the reason I carried on playing was because it's literally part of the rules to smash into someone with your shoulder. Brilliant. And sometimes it was that kind of, I'm so frustrated internally at what was going on around me that I take it out on another 15, 16-year-old lad. Well, that was okay. It's part of the rules. They do it back to me and everything was fine, because it was like a pleasure pain thing.
Yeah.
I never wanted to self-harm. I never wanted to beat myself up. So why not let someone else do it? You can kind of walk away with a black eye or a bruised rib or something, and that's okay. Within the anger, then that kind of bargaining, I think, is the next step. People find God, maybe, or find a way of using something, whether it be talking therapy, such as what we're doing now, or whether it be, counselling, getting social services involved as a kid, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, people turn to self-administering things such as booze, even as a teen. Then you get into depression, which, as we all know, is just intense. You're sad, for want of a better phrase. Depression is when you're sad and down, and you can't see positives in a lot of things. And as we all generally know, alcohol and drugs don't actually help, despite the fact that they do.
Sorry to interrupt, but just the whole thing with alcohol and drugs is that I think it's Louis C.K. that said something.
How the fuck do you compete with that? How do you take a miserable person with no control over their lives and tell them with a straight face, oh, you can't do drugs. You can't do that, baby. All drugs are a perfect solution to every problem you have right now. How do you beat that? Drugs are so fucking good that they'll ruin your life. I mean, that's how good they are.
I suppose, if we're being pedantic, they're absolutely incredible. They've got a hell of a lot of power, more than any of us do. So,
exactly.
I suppose, which leads us to that last little bit of, I'm trying to remember now, acceptance, which is what maybe Louis C.K. is referencing, in that once you get past that stage, even if it's acceptance that the drugs aren't your drugs don't work. They're not doing your,
We were all thinking it.
the
We were all
job.
thinking it.
Yeah. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Whether booze, whatever it is, or even turning to some sort of violence or as I referenced before, I was a bit of an arsehole, increasing that to being a lot of an arsehole. It's not going to really help you. So look to therapies that may, and look to trying to cut that cycle out. And as I said, it took me, I was 17 years or something to get to 30, 31 before I accepted everything that had actually taken place, because I'd been a semi-user of things for a long, long time. Yes, there were periods of abstinence, don't get me wrong, but are you ever really recovered from addiction if you go back to it at some stage?
Well, that's something they say, isn't it? Is that you never recover from it. You just learn to deal with it on a daily basis. I know we talked about drink, and you've managed to get to a place now where you can have a drink every now and again, and you come from a place of controlled drinking rather than complete abstinence, which I think is great. That's something I tried to break the back of for years and years and years, but then had to really accept that drink is just not something I can control. It controls me. And that in and of itself is very humbling, and it's embarrassing, and there's all kinds of shame attached to that. But ultimately you're learning to take responsibility for how you deal with things. And it sounds like you got to a point where you accepted things. Was there a specific point that you can remember where it all started to come together, or was it a very gradual acceptance?
I think it had been starting to come for a while. A lot of it was, I would very much doubt that many people watching this don't understand what I mean by waking up that each morning of going, oh, if only I just hadn't done it, kind of thing, hadn't got that legless or whatever. So that acceptance comes in, almost linked to the grief and loss thing. Accepting that you don't necessarily need that, but at the same time also taking back that control feeds into it for me, and that ability, as you said there, that controlled abstinence. Like I can go days, weeks, months without a drink of alcohol in any description. Not to raise money for charity or anything like that, just because I can. I happen to do dry January every year.
Yeah.
That's just something because I can. That's whatever, and it's almost kind of like a control test as well. Is that I still can. Look at me, get in there. That doesn't mean to say that I can't enjoy myself and have a few drinks, but I'm also acutely aware that I don't need to get uncontrollable, I suppose. Me and a good mate of both of ours, confidentiality, I probably shouldn't name him, but we used to call it total body shutdown. And there was a couple of occasions where he would genuinely talk to me and be like, seriously, man, how do you not remember this? You just
really,
and I had no idea what had taken place.
You just black out.
And that's when
physically pass out.
Wow. And I don't remember these things. There was 2 occasions that spring to mind mainly. One was in the wonderful leafy suburb of Charlton, and I just
big up Charlton, massive.
Yeah. Boom, boom. Haven't got the top knot anymore, so I wouldn't fit in. But
or the tash, the handlebar moustache.
No, not cool. I'm not cool enough. But I just don't remember leaving the pub, and they found me outside, just in a doorway of 4 banks. At the crossroads, and I was just in a doorway, and apparently the story goes is they were going, look at that lad, oh my god, oh my god, and then they realised who it was. So it's,
I mean, I'm laughing, but it's there's a kind of there's a culture inherent in this country where those kind of stories are met with they're like war stories, aren't they? Like So it's so normalized, that kind of lifestyle is, and I don't want to get on my high horse because I'm very aware that drinking is great for a lot of people, and a lot of people have normal, healthy relationships with alcohol. But you can't deny that the culture in Britain is very much a binge drinking culture, and that kind of, as you said, those kind of scenes are just like, our mates will go, "Hey, look at that! Oh shit, that's our mate. We
Yeah,
better go look after him."
I think oddly enough that was part of what his realization was as well. That actually it's not that funny anymore, is it? Because
Mm,
again, we were a bit older now. Perhaps it's a rite of passage when you're in your teens to get off your face and uncontrollable.
mm,
Perhaps not. Who knows? But I wouldn't change the fact that I experienced certain out of control situations around booze.
mm.
But at the same time, you shouldn't really carry that on, I suppose, in my
No,
humble opinion.
no,
And
I
again, I
I get what you're
think that's what
saying.
he realized, as he said, that almost empathy to other people, like, because I think it was kind of a balls to the wall chat that we had. Because I was like, yes, I understand that you were laughing at me, and thank you very much for sorting me out and getting me in a car and getting me home. But isn't it funny how our first instinct is to laugh? And it's only because you know who I am that you then went, oh, actually, we should help him. If you didn't know me, you'd have walked on by past that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so it does help us understand a little bit. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say those. I, I'm the same as you. I wouldn't change any of those experiences I had because, as we've said, drinking it is a lot of fun. Experimenting with drugs,
yeah,
I'm not going to advocate it, but I had a lot of
no, of
fun doing
course
it.
not. Yeah,
But it gets a bit. It seems a bit sad if I'm again. I don't want to get on my high horse. You start to feel worse about yourself, thinking, "God, I'm getting to this age now, and I can't really keep doing this to myself." It, it feels a bit embarrassing. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I
So
think.
yeah,
Sorry, go on.
no. So I completely get where you're coming from. But what I was going to say, I've just remembered, was that I never had any instances like that where I would black out, or there may be hazy memories of what I'd done the night before. But all in all, I'd have my moments. But all in all, I wasn't a kind of overly aggressive drunk. I would never get into fights and beat people up and have to, apologize to everybody that I'd spoken to the day after. It was a very internalized thing that I went through, which in a way made it much harder to address because not a lot of people saw it. There was no intervention. People quite close to me would see it in relationships and things like that, and family members would perhaps have a pretty good idea. But I was very much a private drinker. I would be quite happy just drinking on my own, and if I can do it with other people, then that's also a bonus. So it became harder to pin down what it was, and then also admit that I needed help for it because, again, coming back to that culture of a few people said to me, "Oh, but you're such a fun drunk."
Yeah,
I was just like, but
yeah.
no, I don't need to hear that. That's not helpful.
That's the point.
I'm telling you, I stopped it because it made me sad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Is correct, and sometimes that link to carrying on, whether it be a quiet drunk or a fun drunk or whatever that may be, it's either becomes a time in all of our lives that if you want to be that fun drunk and constantly drinking, then I'm not going to tell anybody to stop that.
yeah,
I'm going to suggest perhaps they want to calm it down, but I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not
yeah.
going to condescend somebody and say, "Did you know that that's not doing you any good?" It's like
Now
we
listen
we
here, young man.
know, we know
Yeah,
that, and it's
yeah, yeah.
just again that individual. I hate to use it, journey that we're all on. We have to understand, and I think you've mentioned it there of the embarrassment side of things. When my dad did pass away, and then within a few months I'd turned 30. I was kind of drunk for about 6 weeks of turning 30, partly because I was turning 30, so couldn't really deal with that because it's like, but
Mm,
also that was the catalyst a little bit to sort myself out a touch. It took me a couple of years to actually really cement and start the ball rolling in terms of furthering my education, because I needed to clear everything out of my system a bit first. And it was that realization of, you're not a teenager now, mate. It's not funny to just get hammered and pass out on your mate's bedroom floor. It's not who's got a free house. It's like, we're all got free houses because we're renting or buying. Like, it's not, that's not how it works anymore.
Yeah.
Who's got a free? It's just,
That's so funny.
it's,
Alan.
I'm confused. What time is it?
6 o'clock.
How long have we been drinking?
3/4 of an hour.
I think I'll go to my room and lean on the sink. I have a little bit of sick.
Just to come back to that slightly, Chop, losing your mum and your dad. I personally am fortunate enough to say that I haven't experienced loss like that. I've lost my grandparents and things that you would really expect for somebody my age. But one thing that I'm also aware of is that we as a culture do not seem as well adjusted as, say, other cultures at dealing with grief in general. The etiquette around grief and how we approach it, how we talk about it. How was it for you going through that? Were there things that people would do that you perhaps would question, or things that didn't sit right with you? Just navigating your way through that. How was that? Would you agree with that we're not very good at talking about grief or dealing with it, or was that your experience?
Excuse me, sorry. I think, yeah, potentially at risk of offending everybody, we've just had the experience, so to speak, of the Duke of Edinburgh passing away. And out of nowhere, it's every front page for a number of consecutive days was the blanket coverage of TV stations, plural, again for a number of days, and suddenly all these programs. There's no getting away from the fact that the loss of a man is sad to those that knew him. His family will be grieving right now. There's nothing wrong with that. But to then, for us as a society, to enter into that grief and portray it as our own fascinates me. I'm never going to tell anybody that you're not supposed to do that. But what it does illustrate to me is that we blooming well love a bit of grief over here, don't we?
You think?
And I think that's what permeates to the rest of us a touch. Grief and loss, as we mentioned before, but also that kind of every year, that remembrance thing that we do isn't overly private anymore. We kind of share it with lots of people. And it's a fine line somewhere, and I don't know where it is, because to internally do it on our own, if we link it as the analogy to drinking, that's not going to help, because to internally grieve, do it all on your own, that's going to hurt you potentially. You're not going to sort of process that to be able to make it comfortable and be okay. But to tell everybody and all over the place almost trivializes it a touch and loses the personalization that you want. Because if we just use my mum for an obvious example, there's people who right now sort of comment on like a social media post, oh, I'm really sorry, and it's like, I've got no idea who they are, because I've done a hashtag loss or something like that they're picking up on that.
Well, you're sorry, Chop. Sorry to interrupt you, but your video has just dropped out. But carry on regardless, because I can still hear you. So that's fine.
That's probably better for the viewer, because my face isn't the best.
No. Carry on.
But I was just about to say that in terms of the overarching talking to a lot of people, that's actually what talking therapy is. So it's also not a bad thing that happens either. So there's somewhere in the middle where, in terms of processing grief and us as a society or a generation accepting that and moving forward need to sit.
Yeah.
But there's so many of us that it kind of comes to that point of, is any of it wrong or is any of it right? And
Yeah,
then,
I suppose. Sorry to interrupt, but I suppose what you're talking about there is an idea of a collective grief. How we, oh, you're back, good. A collective grief of how we, mourn somebody as a collective, and then a very private grief, which, quite rightly, is something which should be kept within the family. With your experience of losing your mum and your dad and your grandparents, is that something which you found? As a culture, would you say that we are better adjusted than other cultures? Or I guess what I'm saying is that I get the impression that we're not that great. So I was looking at how people mourn in other cultures. And for example, here, there's the New Orleans jazz funeral, which is very much a celebration, combining West African, French, and African American traditions. These funerals merge the experiences and sentiments of grieving and celebration, as the funeral mourners are led by an elaborate marching band. And then we've got the Ghana fantasy coffins. In Ghana, people are often buried in highly decorative coffins that celebrate their passions in life. These fantasy coffins are made of all different types of shapes, such as animals, luxury cars, and other symbols. And then you've got the Day of the Dead in Mexico. It's been around for several thousands of years.
yeah.
Very much a celebration. It's loud, it's vibrant, it's colourful. How do you reconcile that with what you've gone through? How were the funerals with you? Was that something you tried to, obviously not all singing, all dancing, but mourning in England is very much seems very the opposite of that from my limited experience of it.
I suppose, well, without doubt, yes, the opposite is true. Oddly enough, TV shows, but I've been watching Your Honor recently, and that's set in New Orleans.
Yeah, I've
And
seen it.
oh, well, there you go. It's spoiler alert, everybody. There's a death,
Oh, there's a death. Yeah. Happens very
and
early on.
basically they have what you've just described as the funeral march.
That's right. Yeah.
And literally yesterday, mate. So that's fascinating in
Wow.
itself. So good work.
Yeah.
Is when I watched that episode, because I haven't got a time to binge watch anything anymore. But that fast, just watching it was just, what is going on here? But also, and yeah, I mean, Mexican Day of the Dead festival is perhaps, for me, maybe the most famed one that people are aware of worldwide. That's almost to the other extreme, isn't it? Of everybody celebrate the fact that this person is no longer here, but they were here, and it's a celebration. We have celebrations of life. It's like, is that a celebration that they are alive in a different form post?
Yeah, exactly.
Here?
That's
And
exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, they're sort of sending out a beacon of this to attract them. Actually says here that Nahua people, Aztec, Toltec, and other Nahua people considered mourning the dead disrespectful. So it is the inverse of exactly what you said. Yeah.
Dead, get over it.
So,
But
I think I agree. That is a bit strong, isn't it? Like, how dare you disrespect?
I think that, well, you kind of hit on it anyway. In right back in when we come into the world, we don't have a choice over what background we have, what our nationalist focus is, or what our culture will bring to where we are. I think it's, for me, it's a word that's better than nice, but a nice thing that we have funerals. But they're not
Respectful.
nice. Yeah, respectful. There you go. My brain. Is a positive, but also I've always found it fascinating having a wake, because you've still got to spend some money on feeding a load of people that you may or may not even know. Which is, as I say, in terms of my mum's funeral, I was a kid, and I can remember still now. Sorry, mate, it almost chokes me, because I had to stand outside and shake hands of all these people and thank them for coming. What? Whereas, because again, maybe because of my age, at my dad's, didn't do that. I just kind of left. See you later. We'll go. We still had a wake. We still had a celebration of life post funeral service, because neither of them were overly religious, so they didn't have any requirement for certain religious burials or service time constraints or anything like that. We just went to a local con club and had a few beers and a bit of a boogie, which again is then another thing of you see people, good to see you at a funeral, and it's just that you don't realise that you're saying these things that are just standard vocabulary from conversations.
That's right.
Because I suppose at the same time, it still is nice to see those people. So it's not a bad thing either. It is a good thing, and I think I've said it about 3 times. That celebration of life is actually, I think, fairly important, and I suppose there's that anti-judgment thing. There shouldn't really be any judgment over how people do that.
Absolutely not.
But, and again, that link to the alcohol use, perhaps, is that as long as hopefully that they're not spiraling into a bit of depression or inability to continue in their lives, the people that are mourning and have been left behind should be supported as best they can. Which is, as I say, the post turning 30, I actually went on I used the fact that I was still in mourning for my dad to really put the hammer down on my private boozing, and then just realised I was waking up every day and like, what am I doing? So that's not a healthy morning. That's not a celebration of his life.
No.
That's being kind of selfish to self.
Self-destruction in a way, isn't
Is
it?
what selfish is.
Yeah. I suppose there is there's no painless way to navigate grief, is there? But the formalities of what you've said, the whole funeral, of you thanking people for coming to the funeral, the very rigid, it seems, exchanges that happen at those places. But you're right, the important part really is the aftermath of that.
What I remember of my mum's funeral is that everyone was a bit down. Whereas at my dad's funeral, we did actually ask, please don't wear black. My dad was, he was cheers mate, a blooming hoarder. So next of kin has to clear everything up. Yeah, but anyway, he had an absolute truck full of t-shirts. I've no idea why. So we just kind of said to everybody, "Does anyone want to wear a t-shirt that was my dad's?"
Oh, good show.
And you can take it home.
And you can keep it and do us a favour.
Yeah, and because that, double bang on, mate, double-edged sword. You can keep it and cuddle it at night if you want,
and clear some space for us.
Yeah, but also you're going to give me a bit of less of a task to do tomorrow. Thanks.
Good, man.
There's a free drink behind the bar now. Go on.
I'm really pleased that you reached out to me, man, because I think it's great to see, without sounding like I'm doing a Jerry Springer type roundup of everything we've talked about. Let's, sort of repackage it nice and neatly. But the fact that you've overcome a lot, and acknowledging these things and your own struggles with them, and just how you navigate your way through life, and being open and honest about it, I think is really commendable. So
yeah, no, it's as you touched on already, but kind of cathartic, and it's talking therapy isn't for everybody. We know this, but it's also a positive thing to engage in should you choose to. There's been things that have happened since my dad passing away, and obviously improving myself. As I've said, there are some great things that occur in life, such as graduating. I don't know what I pointed at then, but anyway.
Graduated just
yeah,
as my
graduated just to my left here, over my shoulder.
My degree is on the floor over there. And also, you've got your own family now, lovely Laurie and little Elodie. You know, your own family
exactly.
to call your own.
And it provides, I think, again, similar to my studying, I don't think I'd have been a particularly positive role model or even a particularly good father, dare I suggest. Who's to say I am one now? I think I'm doing all right, but at the same time,
you're doing all right, mate.
They are the absolute apples of my eye kind of thing. They bring me joy on a daily basis, especially Elodie. Despite her being incontinent, you're allowed because you're 19 months old.
We all shit ourselves every now and again.
We all were at one point,
We've
but I
all
love her
done
to
it.
bits, you know. And it is that kind of, and I think, for want of another cliche, it's that kind of strong partner in your world, whether you be gay, straight, lesbian, black, white, Cuban, Asian, whatever. It's you
Will Smith
kind of
quotes in here
need.
as well. Dropping them all in today.
Hell yeah, we're going for it. We're going to the top. We just, even right now, I've got a good mate who I've known for a long time that I'm conversing with. All of these people to be able to help you navigate through life. And it needed Laurie, as you mentioned then, to essentially stand in front of me and go, shut up, knobhead. Talk about. And that kind of, for me to not then angrily go, who are you calling a knobhead? See ya. To actually go, oh, kind of like this one. So, yeah, what do I need to do about this? And then, obviously, start the encountering of meandering parenthood, which is probably for a different podcast.
That sounds like a whole other interview in and of itself.
But it so far so good. Despite as you're aware, I don't even know if we're going into it today, but the ridiculousness of her entrance into the world was quite literally for me mind blowing.
Well, yeah, go into it. Do you know what? I am conscious that I've got a free trial on this thing, which lasts for an hour, and we're getting up to an hour now, and nothing has happened that's suggesting that we're going to get kicked off the call. So let's just keep going and see what happens.
Can you edit these things out, or what?
We'll find out. Oh yeah, I can edit this bit out, but it's not telling me that it's going to stop recording. So yeah, let's go into that, man, and let's hope for the best. Yeah, go for it.
It's just so that there's not. I didn't want there to be a complete focus on kind of addiction recovery and that side of mental health.
Yeah.
Because in terms of my daughter coming into the world, she was 8 weeks premature, and
I didn't know that.
It was a difficult time because I just finished my second year of studying, and the navigation of parenthood, especially my first child, my only child to date, it is scary enough as it is. But just the fact that out of nowhere, suddenly it was, oh my God, it's happening. What? This isn't supposed to happen for a few weeks yet, was difficult. And we spent the first 16 days in NICU, or neonatal intensive care unit. And it was hard because we couldn't really look after her appropriately, correctly, and kind of hug her properly because she's got wires and all these things plugged into her, and it's just what. She was also very, very small. I've got a picture of her where my two hands are over her. I don't know if you can really see. Two hands are over her, and that's pretty much covers her entire body, head to toe. And this little defenseless thing then triggers certain potential memories. And again, that kind of understanding trigger patterns, as we've touched on in terms of addiction, previous Andy would have probably just gone to the off license and been like, sweaty fags, bottle of whiskey, cheers, mate, keep the change. And instead I didn't, because there's now this person that exists that you want to be better for, just improve your life for, because that should then mean that their life is improved or has a better chance. But I almost threw the towel in at university because it was pretty damn stressful, to be perfectly honest. It was actually lucky maybe that I was studying social work, because again, perhaps my earlier age and my experiences built in my inner resilience. Perhaps I'm capable of dealing with certain things. I don't know, but I struggled with this, and well, let's call it Latte Gate. It was actually, I think, my first or second day back for my third years of studies.
Right.
And well, I'll pretend I'm doing it. So here's a latte in my hand, and I went in the middle of a lecture and threw a latte all over myself.
Oh wow!
Um,
How did that happen?
Pretty embarrassing. Styled it out as a South Park episode with Cartman, who tended to be naked, and he kind of goes across the screen like this.
Right.
That's what I did at the front of the lecture, just like, nothing to see. I've not got coffee all over me.
Wow.
You were in front
of people. You weren't sat in the.
We're all just in a lecture.
You were sat with other
room,
people, yeah.
Lattes moderately warm. So, and I've saturated my pants now, so I just wanted to try and clean them or something. Perhaps cool my legs down.
How did that happen? What was that?
So, first and foremost, my university tutor said, listen, now's not the time to be a martyr. Now's the time to actually, you're in your final year. This was separate after everybody had gone home. It's like being at school again. She's like, right, I'll see you all tomorrow. Andrew, you're going nowhere. Oh, I'm 14 again. But she basically said, something's not right. No, that was an interesting thing for me to witness. But it was also the fact that I'll do it again. I was looking at the screen because I couldn't see it properly.
Right.
Now, again, arsehole Andy in his 20s used to take the mick out of people going, I can see anything. I've got really good vision. Even sort of the piss out of friends who had glasses and stuff. Again, wouldn't have been a very good social worker back in the day. But at that situation was a kind of occurrence. I need to obviously do something here. Went home, told Laurie about it. And she said, well, yeah, you are looking at things differently. Kind of being a bloke, being a bloke, I just pretended that, whatever, it's nothing to worry about. And then it was actually,
itself out.
Yeah, I'll see you again. It was at my placement where social work, you have to do practice placements. So essentially working but not being paid kind of thing. And my supervisors at work, at placement, so I said, why are you looking at your computer like this? And I realised I was overcompensating for the fact that my vision was impacted. So I went for a eye test at the opticians. I don't know why I said that, because that's pretty obvious where you get an eye test. And
it wasn't out of a car boot. It was
went to a car wash for an eye test, which would have probably proven that I needed some help with my vision.
Plot twist.
Yeah,
it was at a car wash.
And I've kind of said this before to people, but he did this remarkable thing that healthcare professions do when they're giving you a bit of negative news, and he essentially said, okay, well, here's your results. You need to go to the emergency eye hospital. You need to take them here. You haven't stood up yet, Mr. Lamerton, and you need to go. So you stand up. And he seemed to be essentially, in a very calm-mannered way, saying, get to the hospital.
Right.
But he can't do that because that will induce fear and concern and anxiety from me. That was when I realised that the MRI has literally A&E has an eye A&E. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
and cue the start of a couple of months of assessments and tests, MRI scans at the MRI hospital, which was quite funny, squirting stuff in my eyes, loads blood tests, and where I, unfortunately, for want of a better phrase, sit here before you now, and I've had a formal diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. Which is potentially triggered by the horrific situation of stress induced by the premature birth of Elodie. Because although Laurie can't quite remember it for obvious reasons, there was a really small period, literally about 90 seconds, when this chief midwife came in dark red clothes compared to everybody else in blue, and said, "We need to have a quick word. Have you given any formal consideration to the fact that neither of these two will survive this?"
No. I've heard similar stories about this, and it terrifies me.
Yeah, that was an important, because some people have already reacted when I've shared this and said, how would they speak like this? And it's like, because they've got it.
Yeah.
Imagine they hadn't survived this, and then I sue the arse off them saying, you never told me about this. And also that kind of, it used to be fight or flight. I think now it's fight, flight, or freeze. They just added an F.
Oh, have they? Right. I didn't know that.
And it's that kind of fight for it, flight when you're legging it away, or freeze where you don't do anything.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense.
It does actually, yeah.
And I immediately went into fight mode. It's like, well, I'm not going anywhere. She needs to know that I am right by her side in this incredibly amazing feat that I'm a man. I'll never have to go through childbirth. And I'll be honest, thank God, because I couldn't.
That's not to say that being on the other end of that and not having any control whatsoever, ever, other than, like you say, you either fight, flight, or freeze. So when you said you go into fight mode, what did that look like? Was that a?
It was.
You didn't fight anybody, did you?
No. I think I remember like taking my jumper off, like, whoa, come on then. Obviously, I had a t-shirt. I didn't like bare skin. Nobody needs to see that. I had a t-shirt on and stuff, but it was that kind of, right, I need to be in the zone. And I just went right by her. And it's almost a cliche from like films these days. Like Laurie had my hand and almost broke my fingers. But I didn't really care. It's just break my fingers, they'll heal. A bit flipping back to the grief and loss thing, like you can't heal death. So it's just whatever you need. There was even a bit where one of the midwives said, turn the knob up on that because they needed to increase the fluids that were coming. I'm like, what? I'm not qualified to do this. But then I realised I turn a tap on every day when I clean my teeth, so of course I can twist something. So
you're just the right man for the job.
Yeah, but that experience has then led to me having, technically now, I'm classed as having a hidden disability, so to speak.
So have they said
is remarkable?
Have they said explicitly that is a direct result of the stress that you were under, or it could be?
It could. It'll always be could.
Yeah.
All I'm going off is kind of the time constraints of when it happened, the chronological events.
Yeah.
I can't. There's not really anything that happened for a while beforehand or during my process of having diagnosed, because you don't just rock up to the GP who says, "Oh yeah, you've got MS, you mate." You've got to go through quite a number of substantial, rigorous testing from ophthalmology, urology, and neurology, which is all reasoning to kind of rule the things out, get a formal diagnosis. And again, it's just that kind of, it gives you a little bit of grounding, I guess, that thankfully I don't necessarily have to booze my way through it, or can't think of the correct way, but drug my way through it.
Yeah,
Use drugs
you
to
don't need any
nullify it.
crutches.
No, because I've got a crutch in place in terms of Laurie, and especially Elodie.
Yeah.
And another reason why, again, I've kind of done the reaching out to you thing, in that personally, yeah, there's a little bit of selfishness in terms of it helps me, the cathartic side, being able to talk through it. But also, I trust you as well, mate, and we do go quite far back.
Yeah, yeah.
And, how good was Secret Santa, for example?
Very good.
And
For the watchers, Chop got me some amazing gifts, one of which I've got here.
Yes,
and
that's it.
The film in 5 seconds. The little clapperboard, which I've got back there. And amazingly, some Iron Brew sweets, because I realised that Iron Brew was spelled IRN with no O. And Chop very thoughtfully got me some Iron Brew sweets. The best Secret Santa gifts, plural, I've ever gotten. I was made up. So, yeah.
You've covered it, but the reason for me bringing that up was also for everybody viewing again, but also you and I. It's that kind of friendship's kind of deeper than just skin, isn't it? It's that sort of. It doesn't really matter to me that we haven't overly gone into deep conversation about the ins and outs of life before. I'll still fight for you always, because you're my mate, and I think that's important to be able to converse about, especially during something like this, because this is you putting yourself out there in front of everybody. There could be people on the other side of their chosen device thinking,
what
have you heard these two absolute whoppers going on with themselves here? But I guarantee that you will still create another podcast and another podcast and another podcast, and who knows where it will go, which is partly why I wanted to do this, to help you as well. And it's how life should really work, and it's all those things that I've just mentioned. Secret Santa, talking to you, you bettering your career, me having health processes, wife, daughter, education. They're my new drugs and booze.
Yeah, man.
And they're remarkable and also significantly healthier.
Mm-hmm. If I can shoehorn in, sorry to keep interrupting you, Chop, but if I can shoehorn in a very pithy bit of advice that really resonated with me, and that is connection is the opposite of addiction, which really, really helped, on a genuine level. That's pretty much what this is to a degree. As I've said before, I don't want to lean too far into being like a self-help guru and look at me trying to help the world. I want to keep it fun and engaging, all those other things. But this really is a reward in and of itself, because a lot of those things you've chatted about, I didn't know before we had this chat, and we've known each other for 20 years now. Because the dynamic of boast exchanges on the surface level, as you've said, is we'll go out for a few beers, get hammered, and then not remember it the next day, which is great. But then, there's room for other things as well. I'm really hoping, mate, that we get that last 20 minutes, because as I say, we're at an hour 20 now. So I really hope that I don't lose any of that. So I'm going to wrap this up and just say,
cool.
Thank you again, man. Thank you. And keep on keeping on. We'll see each other soon, I'm sure. And you can carry on now enjoying the rest of your birthday, man.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm just going to finish my water.
I'm going to finish my... how did you pronounce it?
I can't remember. Fresnay.
And finish my cool, refreshing Fresnay. Thank you very much.
No idea how this is actually said. But
it's rough.
It sounds good. We could channel our inner friend and call it Fruxnut, he used to call it.
It's bad, because I recall now that I didn't actually really like the taste of Prosecco anyway. So that is not boozy, and I just got it for effect, just to celebrate with you. Thank you again. Look after yourself, and we'll speak soon.
You
Happy
too.
birthday again, mate.
Cheers, mate. Good to talk to you, and I'll carry on viewing.
102, take 3.
Action, please.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson. So Paul Masson.
Thanks again to Andrew Lamerton there. Cheers, mate. Wish you all the best. And thank you again for coming on. That's it for this week. I will see you next time, maybe for a live stream, which I'll upload onto YouTube, depending on how much time I've got. But I will keep putting these up, and I'll keep reaching out to you. If you've got anything you want to ask me, anything you want to share with me off the back of this podcast or anything else, you can email me at quietdogpodcast@hotmail.com. You can get me on all the socials. Please do subscribe to this channel. Smash the bell with your fist, with vigour, and I can't think of another word. Share it, and it will help just spread the word of this podcast. And it's not why I do it, but it is nice, isn't it? It's nice when people like things that I do, and the more the merrier. So please share it. Pathetic. Thanks again. As I said earlier, try the 2 OK rules. Just see what happens. Just try it as an experiment. Are you okay? Yeah, but are you okay? They might tell you to shut up, or they might actually open up to you and tell you a bit more. Also, if you've got a mate who's thinking of giving up drink for a bit, don't be a dick and say, oh, what are you doing that for? You know, show them a bit of support, because you never know what's actually going on for them personally. That's it. That's all I've got to say. Enjoy the summer, guys. Enjoy the spring. Enjoy the sunshine. Enjoy the beer gardens. And let's have a fucking good time, shall we? Until next time, thanks again, and I'll see you soon. Ta-ra, bye.